Can't forget about Newfoundland joining Confederation. Welcome to lesson 10.5. We're going to find out why Newfoundland joined Confederation, why it took them so long to join Confederation, and then the overall consequences that came of that. So stick around and let's learn something. All right, this is the last lesson, lesson 10.5. Why did Newfoundland finally decide to join Confederation, and what were the consequences of joining Confederation for Newfoundland? Way back in 1867, they decided that they're not going to join with Canada, and they had way too much in common with Britain than they did with the other colonies, so they decided that they're not going to join. But in the 1930s, they do change their mind. And they start looking at joining Canada. So what was causing them to change their mind? It's important to know that the economy of Newfoundland in the 1860s, 70s, 80s, early 1900s, and things like that, based on fish, wood, and minerals. And they were doing very well until the Great Depression happened in the 1930s. This is when a worldwide depression took place and the economy collapsed, which meant no one was able to buy the resources from Newfoundland. Thousands of people were losing their jobs, I should say. And the government at the time, they couldn't pay the interest on the money that was being borrowed to help out the people. So the colony's elected government at the time, they were removed in 1934 and replaced with a commission from Britain, hoping that they could turn things around. But it didn't turn around for quite a few years until the start of the Second World War, when the United States and Canada were building military bases in Newfoundland, and this was starting to bring jobs back to the people for these military bases. So now things are on the upswing again. War is happening, jobs are being created, and we are now going to take a look at joining Confederation again. So let's revisit Confederation. So after the war, Britain was looking at Newfoundland, and they were wanting Newfoundland to kind of take over its government again, like it had prior to the Great Depression. So there was three options, really. Okay, so are we going to return to that colonial status? Maybe we should leave the British Commission in place, or maybe we should actually join Confederation. And like we saw with BC, like we saw with Prince Edward Island and Alberta and Saskatchewan, there is a debate that is going to take place over Confederation. And the major benefits now, having come out of the Great Depression and having gone through World War II, those benefits included social services and a stable economy. So they brought the vote to the people in two referendums, and this started in 1948, where we have two referendums, and 52.3% of the people vote to join Canada. You need over half for it to win, and they had over half. They had 52.3%. So on March 31st, 1949, Newfoundland and Labrador become Canada's 10th province. And this is a advertisement. This has since been recreated, but this is an advertisement trying to get people into joining Canada. So this is an ad, and it's being sent out to all mothers. Confederation would mean that never again will you or your children be hungry in Newfoundland. If you have children under the age of 16, you will receive every month a cash allowance for every child. So mothers obviously are going to see this as a good thing, and they're going to want to join. This was also sent out to all war veterans. Canada treats her veterans better than any other country in the world. To all wage workers, so people who have jobs. All wage workers will be protected by unemployment insurance. Newfoundland under Confederation will be opened up and developed. Your country, Canada, will be prosperous. Your condition will be a better place to live. To all the railroaders, you will become employees of the biggest railway in the world, the CNR, the Canadian National Railway. You will have security and stability as employees. To all lightkeepers, you will continue to be employees of the Canadian government. Your wages and working conditions will be greatly improved because now we've got more money to be able to share with you. The fishermen of Newfoundland, the cost of living will go down. The cost of producing fish will come down. And the Fish Prices Support Board of Canada, backed by Canada's millions, will protect the price of your fish, so you will have a good life. And to all Newfoundlanders as a whole, the cost of living will come down. The 120,000 children in our country will live better. The 10,000 senior citizens of our country will be protected in their old age. Newfoundland will be linked up with a strong, rich British nation. Newfoundland will go ahead with Canada. That sounds pretty good if you ask me. Like the way, if you read it with that enthusiasm, it's not too bad. But there are some consequences to joining. There are some short-term benefits, yes, the access to the social program. So you have unemployment insurance, you have healthcare, and you have old age pensions. That's awesome. The 1950s see an economic boom, and that boom brought electricity to rural areas of Newfoundland. The iron mines of Labrador get expanded. The forestry and fishing sectors, they do very well. And in 1965, the Trans-Canada Highway stretched the entire province. But there were some long-term issues. The fishing industry began to decline eventually. The seal hunt was limited. And the life that was tied to the sea became unworkable. It's just they weren't making enough money. But in 1999, there was a poll. And still, despite those long-term issues, 85% of the people of Newfoundland and Labrador agreed that joining Canada was actually a success. But what about our First Nations living there? There is going to be an impact on the First Nations and the Inuit. The First Nations and the Inuit remained federal responsibility in other provinces. But Newfoundland is like, wait a second, no, we're going to make this a provincial role. We want to provide the services. We want to provide the schools and the healthcare to our First Nations and Inuit. So Canada's like, okay, you guys want to give it a shot? We're actually going to help you out with this because the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, they had no experience providing these types of services before, so they realized that they would need help. Unfortunately, the province failed to meet the needs of the First Nations and Inuit. And the First Nations, they had to fight to revive their culture. So eventually the Mi'kmaq of the area, they get reserves, and the Inuit, Innu, and Métis, they form various associations to promote a culture and reclaim traditional land that was once there, trying to fix what the province of Newfoundland and Labrador did by trying to take responsibility over from the federal government. All right, head over to your notebook and complete the questions for this part of the chapter.